And don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone when you walk through a
Good evening, everybody. How we doing tonight? Another episode of Kicking It Back with Matt. We got a couple of things we're going to talk about. Number one is going to be MLS preview in the back half of the episode. We're going to talk a little bit of Champions League, first round exits, of course, some Liverpool news. We got some exciting new news about media credentials at Inter Miami. But first, proud papa right here. I can't wait for Sunday. Going to see my daughter's first official collegiate lacrosse game up in New York, Dominican University, playing Southern New Hampshire. Joined right now by my buddy and colleague, AJ. AJ, how are you?
I'm good, man. I am good. And can I tell you that my kid made the team, we think?
Bravo.
We
Congrats.
believe she did. They sent out a blanket email that said, if you're receiving this email, you made the team. So we're assuming that they didn't send it to her accidentally.
Did she watch my YouTube tutorial on how to make a women's lacrosse team?
I don't know. She went to two. It was a 4-day tryout. She went to 2 days. Then she got sick. And then she was complaining that her cradle arm was achy and sore. I don't even know what a cradle arm is, but I just assumed that had to do with the lacrosse.
Picture it of like doing a bicep curl.
Okay.
It's essentially what a cradle is.
I'm assuming that everyone that tried out made the team, but that's good. That's good. In this, for instance, I'm okay with that because my kid needs to experience some teamwork sort of training here, and I guess I'll be like you and go on a lacrosse game soon.
Yeah, I'm super stoked. They're going for a third consecutive conference championship and hopefully a deep run in the NCAA tournament come May. So she's a freshman. She's worked her tail off her whole life to get to this point. And even better for me as a freshman, she's getting good playing time. So I'm excited to be along for the ride for the next 4 years.
When does it end, buddy? I mean, I don't mean it the way it sounds, but when does it end? My kid's only 11. I mean,
Well,
and you got 4 years left, and your kid's in. Like, I envision, and I love my kid, but I envision the day that she walks out the door for college, that me and my wife just pack up our crap and disappear off the face of the earth.
yeah, but on the flip side, my man, like my son went to school for a year and 2 weeks and came back home. Just college life wasn't for him. So you never know. He's 21 living at home. And Henry, you're probably watching and listening right now. So love having you back in a weird way.
Oh, that's not what you said when he wasn't watching and listening the other day, but I won't bring that up. I'm just kidding, Henry.
Yeah. Hey, so you've got some exciting news. What you just got done with Bleacher Brothers?
I do have exciting news that we are officially credentialed with the MLS and Inter Miami. So we will Saturday night we'll be out there against my team. Right there, my New York City Football Club. So I'm kind of stoked. And check this out, just like college football, the very first college football game I ever watched, period. I think I was on the sidelines reporting for FAU. Now my first MLS game live and in person. I'm going to be there as a credentialed media. So it's pretty cool.
Now, where do they put you? Do they put you on the opposite side from where the teams are?
I don't have the
Or you're on the same
slightest.
side?
I don't have the slightest idea. I'm gonna be figuring out as I go along on Saturday night. All I'm hoping for is this, Matt. All right, and I'm gonna check right now. Um, there is no programming alert. There is no LaStella report tonight because Robbie is at the basketball game. So if anybody's figuring on tuning in to LaStella report immediately after your show tonight, no LaStella report tonight. But I'm checking the weather report here because Saturday, 63 for the low, 72 for the high. I'm not digging that. If I'm going to be out there on the soccer sidelines, I want like 85 for the low.
What time is kickoff?
7:30.
I'll take 65 right now. It's like 18 degrees here, my man.
Yeah, but
It's
then
cold.
there's going to be a breeze, and I don't like the
Put a
cold weather.
sweatshirt on.
What's that?
Put a sweatshirt on.
But the only sweatshirts I own are either New York City Football Club or the Carrick Rangers, which I'm waiting for my Carrick Ranger Falcons. But just a quick side note, not to throw a curveball at you on your own show. I just got this email where they sent this out. Maybe they heard me bitching last night, but they sent out a new one that is better to print for framing.
Oh, look
Still
at
doesn't
that.
have. Yeah, they must have heard my show last night and how we were bitching about this. So yeah, this is the certificate of ownership. Still doesn't have a name on it other than Michael W. Smith. But yeah, look, people listen when we talk.
The average fan, right?
Yeah, I mean, I called them out last night, and look at this now. They said, once again, let me see, where is it? Attached, you will find an alternate ownership certificate that is easier to print. My thanks to fellow owner Fred Graff for the new design. So apparently, this is like two guys in a basement just banging these things out. So this
Now,
is a
is it
real.
just easier to print, or is there any physical change to the certificate?
It looks better than the other one did.
More
Um,
legit?
yeah, but it still has my shares wrong. Still has the incorrect amount of shares in there. But I don't know. I'll make my own up. That's all. And immediately after last night's show, I went home and looked up the Tabor something. I'm already down. I'm already getting in on two other clubs. All right. I'm gonna
Okay.
one up Ryan Reynolds every single time he buys a club. I'm buying another one. So I'm buying the Wii Football Club, which I still don't know what the hell the Wii is.
I looked that up after I came on your show for a quick few minutes. I still don't know what that is.
Me either, but I'm gonna own it, and then I'm gonna own this one in wherever the heck it is. I don't know. Where the heck it is? It's the Wee Scottish Football Club. They're called the Calderon Braves FC, and then the other one is NK Tabor United. Uh, let's see. It's a Slovenian soccer team run by former Manchester United scouts.
Huh?
And also for sale. Also, there's some cricket for sale. There's an indoor facility for serious training for golf and soccer, and yeah, I don't. But anyway, I'm sticking to this. I have to keep finding soccer teams to buy into, and with this other U.S. league, I don't know if if you want me to bring this up, but
Yeah,
this other U.S. league, which again I'm learning. But this other U.S. league, which is looking to rival MLS and is going to be structured more like the traditional soccer leagues around the world with relegation and promotion and everything, I would imagine that some of these teams will pop up also with some ownership for sale. And I think that that's something where maybe you should make me stop working alone. Because if you remember the very beginning of Welcome to Wrexham, you got Rob McElhaney saying, look, I want to buy a soccer team. I want to buy an NFL team, but I can't afford it. So I went to England, but I only have TV money. So I needed somebody with movie star, but no, not movie star money, superheroes to movie
Hero.
star money,
Yeah.
and then all the other crap that Ryan Reynolds owns. So you obviously have way more money than I do. So we take my little bit. I'll be the McElhaney. You be the Deadpool, and we go in and we start scooping soccer teams out, buddy.
That won't be a bad idea. I'm a little bit nervous about this competing league. I'm going to get into it with Nick, but you got 30 teams now in MLS.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of talk going to 32. We got 50 states. In those 50 states, how many major cities do you have overall, right? Like, so can we fit enough teams geographically to make this work so we can get promotion, relegation, and have those leagues coincide together so we get some more I don't want to say substance, but some more action, like some more thrilling moments. It's like that relegation thing, man, is it's huge.
If
So go ahead.
if they play their cards right, then these two leagues will merge in the next 2 years.
Yeah, they got to play their cards right. They got to make sure it's sustainable. That the cities that they're putting the clubs in, that they have the ability to build a stadium. And we're not talking NFL stadiums. We're not talking baseball stadiums. We're talking soccer stadiums, 20 to 25,000 people,
Mm-hmm.
right? But like I want to. We always talk about Wrexham. Bad loss yesterday. But they still have a long way to go. They got 15 games to go. They're still in third place. But the craziest thing in that League One is if they hold this place and finish third,
Mm-hmm.
they have to go into a 4-team playoff to earn promotion. And they got to win that 4-team playoff, obviously, to go up because only the top 2 teams from that level move up to the championship.
Okay.
And what's crazy is, I mean, to you and me, this is a lot of money. But to your boys that own Wrexham, it's only a $4 million bump.
So when they move up one more league, they're only getting $4 million more. Dude, that's like Ryan Reynolds spends that going out to dinner on a
I know
Thursday
Ryan
night.
Reynolds makes that in a day on his tequila. He makes that in probably a day and a half on his phone company. Like, yeah, I was doing some research, and it's only a £4 million difference between the two. But the difference between the championship, where they're trying to get promoted to, and the English Premier League, it's about £110 million.
So where they're at right now in one, if they go up, that puts them two below Premier, right?
One, they're
Oh, it
two
puts
below
them.
now.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah,
So then, do they get into? So if they get bumped, is let's say they do go up, does that put them in Champions League next year?
it puts them in the championship. Lasso did a whole bit on it where they called it the Champions League. It's really the championship. You have to be in the top tier of your country's soccer pyramid in order to be eligible for the Champions League.
Oh, this is so freaking confusing. I hope America does this much simpler so I can understand it.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of Champions League, you had 2 massive contenders go out. We had the second leg of the first knockout stage of the new format Tuesday and yesterday, and Man City got pounced by Real Madrid, and Juventus lost to PSV out of the Dutch league, which is mind blowing. Juventus is an Italian side that has a very strong, rich history of very competitive tournament knockout play. And they usually always make it to at least the semifinals of Champions League. And they got bounced yesterday. And I'm not surprised Man City got bounced because of their form this year. But to be honest, as a Liverpool fan, I would have rather much seen Man City stay in the competition than Real Madrid. Real Madrid's going to be the biggest competition this year.
Yeah, but where do they? How are they as good as Liverpool's been this year? No, right?
If we go from start to where we are now, no. But who's been the better side in the past month? Real Madrid has turned it on, and they've turned it on full bore. And
Mm.
they're playing lights out. And they're just looking scary. And they're getting better with each game. And right now, arguably the best player on the planet, Mbappe, I would say for the first 4 to 5 months of this campaign,
Wait a minute. Where does Ronaldo play?
who cares? Saudi Arabia. Like, he's an afterthought.
Oh, okay. No, I'm trying to put all my pieces together here. I thought that he was on Madrid.
Oh, he was for a long time.
Okay, and
Then he left Real Madrid, went to Juventus in Italy for a couple of seasons, went back to Man United, got in a huge argument with the coach and the upper management, and then he left and went to Saudi Arabia.
I need a league with two teams. That would be much easier for me to track what the hell's going on. It is two teams, but Mbappe or Big Poppy or whatever he's the guy with the face mask from the Olympics.
Yeah, he did wear because he had a busted nose. Yeah,
I know what's going on. I know.
yeah,
I'm not as dumb as I look. Some of
yeah.
it's
So
just for
yeah,
comedic purposes. So
yeah,
they say, "Who is this idiot on here? We can do better than him. If you can do better than me, send us an email, info@bleacherbrothers.com, and we'll get you on here with Kicking It Back with Matt."
yeah. So he had a hat trick yesterday. So they're through to the next round. Liverpool, they've got they had a bye because they finished number one at the top of the standings of the initial round. They got to play either PSG. I'm not worried about them, but they also could get Benfica, and
I had
Benfica,
that one time, but there was a cream that I got from the doctor, healed it right
yeah,
up around like a week.
excellent Portugal side when it comes to cup competition. They know how to navigate, get a result in the first leg, come back, do something in the second leg, and know how to progress. And what's real funny is, you met him for the first time last week on the show, my buddy Merck, the
Mm-hmm.
Bayern Munich fan. He was on point. He predicted that Bayern would win in stoppage time in the second leg of their duel with Celtic.
How
And
does somebody predict all that? I mean, that's like they just pulled that out of his ass and got lucky. Nobody can predict
he,
that.
he said that a week ago Tuesday.
Okay.
Byron Celtic played the second leg this past Tuesday, a full week later. And what happened? Byron won in the 95th minute.
That had to piss a lot of bettors off that were on the other side.
He predicted that a week out, which was, just insane. So, we got the next round of that coming up. But I got to tell you, you know how much of a homer I am for Liverpool.
You are a homer for Liverpool. You are
I
absolutely a homer for Liverpool. I'm going to say that right now.
After yesterday, my man,
Mm-hmm.
I am starting to sweat.
Really? Oh,
So
you were all full of yourself about 2 months ago.
2 months ago, a month ago,
All right. Well,
they lost their last match of the Champions League first round. Who cares? They finished on top. They go into the FA Cup. Don't bring any A team guys. Bring the whole B squad. Lose 1-0. Get knocked out of the FA Cup. I'm okay with that. I know we have this huge fixture schedule coming up with the Caribou Final, Champions League, tough run in the Premier League. They go to Everton last week for the Merseyside Derby. Winning the game, give up the equalizer 8 minutes into stoppage time. Not only do they drop 2 points, and tie the game. 3 red cards after the final whistle.
So how's
Player, head coach, assistant coach, all red carded after the final whistle.
so what happens when you get red carded after the final whistle?
So Curtis Jones, the player,
Hmm.
3 game match ban. Arnie Slot, the gaffer, the head coach, the manager, 2 game ban. The assistant coach, 2 game ban. Now I don't think Slot and the assistant, I don't think they'll get the full 2 games. The whole thing might get waived. Um, but losing Jones for 3 games coming up in the stretch that we have. So we're away to Man City on Sunday. Then we got to go to Newcastle. Newcastle just gave us a hell of a game a month ago, tied us 3-3. Um, got to play Southampton, which they're the bottom of the league team. But every team right now is playing that role of what happens when you go against the best in any sport and
Mm,
you're the underdog. You put on the best show you can, right?
absolutely.
You do whatever you can to win the game. That's what teams are doing. So yesterday they go to Villa, never an easy place to play. Go up. First 5-10 minutes, they look great, like threatening, balls on goal, nothing comes of it. Finally, they break through. It's 1-0. Salah comes in, does what he does. Then they go up another goal. Next thing you know, it's 2-1, sweating it out. 2-2. Game ends on a draw, drop 2 points because you only get 1 point for the tie, 3 points for the win. So they got 12 games to go. They're up 8 points, but the way they're playing and looking, and with the amount of games that they have coming up, fatigue setting in, injuries. They
Hmm.
subbed this kid on yesterday to replace Trent in the back to give him a blow. 5 minutes later, he got a knock and he's out of the game. And I was reading before you and I came on tonight, he might be out for a prolonged time. So within the past week, they've lost 2 defenders, one to a torn hammy. His season's probably done. And this kid, if he's out for a month, things can change. If you watch, you've been watching it and you've been learning, and you might be sitting here and saying, hey, Matt, 8 point lead, 12 games to go. You got it in the bag. Uh-uh. In
No,
the blink of an eye, we could be in second.
that could evaporate in a month.
Not at this point, not even because the fixtures, they right now they're playing 2 games a week. So you drop a game, that's 3 points. You tie a game, that's 2 points. That's 5 points right there in 1 week. Crazy things can happen. I personally think that the manager's been a little bit too full of himself. I think the other teams have tactically figured out what he's doing and how he wants this to play out. And if I'm him, he's got to keep the pedal to the metal, and he's just got to put the strongest 11 out there every week. And this will make you laugh. This guy that I've talked to Henry about, I've talked to Nick about. They paid 75 million pounds for this kid. Yesterday, he's played in a ball. He's 4 feet away from the goal. Put the ball 40 feet over the crossbar.
Wow, that's
He didn't even have to kick the ball. He could have let it bounce off of his shin, and it would have went in. It was a cross the goal pass. So the goalie was beat. It's just this
this is a
guy
wide open net,
wide
and the
open,
guy. Okay,
and his whole form, leaning back, not being over the ball to keep it down. It would have been the game winner, and we would have had the 3 points. And I'd be sitting here saying, "Hey, 10 point lead, 12 games to go. I'm a pig, and you know what?" But that's not the case.
you know, y- sometimes the ball just doesn't bounce your way, and that's a sign. that maybe it did, and that's why I never try never to get too high or too low, because everything's got to even out. And maybe that's what's happening to your Liverpool right now. Maybe they started, like, it drives me nuts in the NFL. There's one sport, or it could be any sport.
Hmm.
A team goes like, who is it? NBA this year, Cleveland. They won. I think they were 19-0 at one point.
Yeah.
All right, they're still a really good team, but it's got to even out. I would rather start out like crap and then catch on when it really matters most. You know what I mean?
But in soccer, you can't get too far behind because in the NBA, right, a win's a win. Typically the team with the top wins, right,
Yeah.
is the number one seed, or winning percentage is the number.
Well, but whoever gets the hottest at the end wins. So if you can stay close enough, if you don't fall too far behind, say you don't fall too far behind a Liverpool who's just playing like unconscious soccer early in the season. Well, now it's catching up to them. And as long as you didn't fall too far behind, you're in striking distance. And if you get hot when Liverpool cools off, that's the point I'm getting at.
Right, but keep in mind, there's no playoff.
Yeah, you got to catch him. You got to catch him now. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so like
But you're
they,
the one panicked, not me. I don't give a flying fairy tale what's going on with Liverpool. You're the one who's panicked. I'm just making a point that
hey, Arsenal's still got to come out and put up 3 points every game to start catching ground. Listen, the good news for me is this: Saturday, Arsenal plays West Ham in a London derby.
Mhm.
We don't play until Sunday, so we'll know what Arsenal did on Saturday.
But
And for us,
isn't
whether
that
it's a
more
draw or
pressure?
a loss, they're both the same. We just want Arsenal to drop points because then that puts them further behind us.
I don't like it. I would rather my team be playing at the same exact time, because let's say Arsenal loses, well then that kind of your momentum or your motivation on Sunday as a team is not going to be as high as it could have been if they won. All right? Now if they win, do you follow what I just said? You know that
I
Arsenal already lost, so the pressure to win is not as much as it would have been. But if Arsenal wins, now you could overpressurize yourself and blow up. I would rather play blind, knowing that, all right, Arsenal's playing right now, we're playing right now, we got to win, let's do our thing.
If it wasn't for the opponent that they had on Sunday, I would completely agree with you. But they're never going up against Man City and never wanting to not win that game. That game is all out war, full bore, 90 minutes of hell. We want to thump you, you want to thump us, and let's see who. It's like a heavyweight boxing fight.
Which team, because I go by the uniform sometimes, which team has the blue and the white stripes? What team is that?
Well, it depends. Man City typically wears an all blue top with white shorts and
No, this
blue
is like a blue
socks.
and white stripes. Looks like a prisoner, like somebody, like somebody's about to take a
Argentina,
mug shot, huh?
Argentina.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, Argentina. That's what it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know. That's my thought, man. You, and all the other Liverpool fans, you were all full of yourself a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. You were untouchable. You clinched it already, and now it's coming back to bite you in the ass, and you're shitting your. I mean, yeah, you're shitting your pants. That's what you're doing, and you're afraid.
Not yet. Maybe after this weekend.
And while you're sitting there Saturday night after, who is it that we're worried about on Saturday? Arsenal.
Arsenal, West Ham.
After Arsenal wins, and you're going to be not able to sleep Saturday night, I'm going to be hanging out with Messi in Miami. That's all I got to say. And maybe Nick
Get
can
his
come
eye.
on here now, and you guys can explain why I'm going to the first MLS game of the season Saturday night, but yet I got home last night and I saw that Messi scored a goal last night in 0-degree temperature. And then the Sounders were playing and all these teams were playing. None of this makes sense to me. So I'm going to get out of your way. All right.
Hey Nick, how are you, my man?
There it is, Matt. What's going on?
How have you been, buddy?
Pretty good. Listen, MLS is back. Messi is back. Life is good. I don't have to think about Manchester United for another 4 months. It'd be great.
Hey, today's like the 1 year anniversary, real quick, since the takeover. I think it looks a lot worse right now than it did 12 months ago.
Well, that's what happens when someone who takes over isn't exactly concerned about what's happening on the field. So,
Right.
yeah, we could spend the next 3 hours talking about that one, but I,
I
I
yeah,
think the
I
results speak for themselves, really, at the end of the
I
day.
gotta ask, piggybacking off of AJ and what he just said, it's funny because it's my first bullet point of what I wanted to ask you is what are we doing playing that game last night? -3 degree weather. Some
With
of the most crucial, important players in the MLS.
Yeah,
It blew
well,
my mind.
I think honestly the reality is this: they've doubled down on the fact that the Champions Cup, the cup where we compete against teams from Mexico and from South America, is legitimate and it means something. And the only way to enforce that is to make them play the game. It was, -20 with 6 inches of snow planned for the previous day. So they postpone it a day and they end up playing in negative temperatures, anyways, with -8 wind chills. So
So
at,
you know
at the risk of their best assets getting injured, I think the ownership of that competition doubled down and said, "Look, we're going to look like we already look like a joke. Nobody watches these games. It's on Fox Sports 2, which you can't even get anymore. But if we don't play the game at all because everybody's too cold, nobody's ever going to watch it. So
so
listen,
you
they
know
they
you
needed to sell ad dollars. How are you going to get ads without Messi on the field, right? So
so explain this to me because you know the MLS side way more than I do. Why was the game in Kansas City and not in Miami when it's the middle of February?
Well, again, just based on the competition format for the Champions Cup, right? So everybody gets a chance to host. It alternates, both based on the previous season and somewhat at random. So Miami will be hosting games in the Champions Cup. It would have made a lot of sense to move it, but again, I think they're trying not to play favorites and they're trying to keep some sort of semblance of legitimacy to this competition. This is where the game was scheduled, and if you're playing soccer in the U.S., you got to be able to play in the cold. And I think the only reason they kept it like that, cold weather being an advantage for U.S. teams, is because when the teams from Mexico have to come play in Kansas City when it's 10 degrees, they might struggle. So that's the best I can give you in terms of actual legitimacy to the competition. Saving your best asset who's ever played or will play in the Champions Cup from freezing his butt off and pulling a hamstring is probably a smart move, right? Put it somewhere. We'll put it somewhere neutral. It doesn't have to come to Miami. Put it in Texas. But
Is
I
this
digress.
is this a two-legged affair?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I thought it was. I listen.
No,
The
nobody cares about this competition, AJ. That's like I woke up
That's
this morning and this was one of the first things I saw on Bleacher Brothers, and it's just like I didn't even know this game was being played last night.
I think the reality is there's not enough crossover fandom between the rampant and avid fans of Liga MX in Mexico and fans in the MLS for them to care about an additional competition. They've already confused the matter with having, the supporters shield and the MLS Cup, where the majority of soccer fans around the world don't know the difference between those two. Now we have the Champions Cup. Miami's playing in four separate competitions and nobody can tell the difference, even if you follow it. So I think they've screwed up in spreading themselves too thin. I understand that they're trying to get fans from across the Americas, not just within the United States, but jam packing a schedule with meaningless games, I don't think is going to do it.
And you play that game on a day when you have Champions League.
Yeah.
You got
You got Real Madrid versus Manchester City streaming live on Paramount Plus, or you can upgrade your cable package for Fox Sports 2 to go watch Kansas City and
exactly.
MLS All Stars Leo Messi and the gang go walk around the field trying to warm their hands. They're all wearing pants. They were all wearing liners.
I was watching some of it on YouTube this morning. I'm like, and that's why I'm like, I gotta ask Nick why. But anyways, MLS is kicking off 30th season,
Yep.
30th team coming in this year in San Diego. Before we touch on that, I gotta ask you, and I think I feel like the MLS is starting like this has got to be the earliest it's ever started. No,
I think so. Typically we're seeing games in March.
man, like
Games in
I
March is
thought
the
I saw
early.
it today. Like usually, like the last week of March.
Yeah, well, that's an unfortunate byproduct again of you've got all these additional competitions, and one of the biggest complaints, unfortunately, from the older players and from some of the star players is fixture congestion. You talk about it all the time when you're, watching the European matches, and they've got Champions League and FA Cup and Premier League, or in Spain they have two local cup competitions as well. Everybody's playing 2 or 3 times a week, and it doesn't quite make sense. So to alleviate that, since the MLS doesn't follow the traditional calendar anyways, they're just moving everything back.
Well, and it's funny because I was talking to AJ pre-show, and he was like, "I felt like we just talked MLS Cup," and I go, "You're right. That was 2 months ago. But believe it or not, in Europe, they get 1 month off. They don't even get the 2 months that MLS is getting.
Yeah,
They
well, they typically get June, July, right? But to sell tickets, they fly around. Well, tickets and jerseys and investments, they fly around the world in July to Cambodia to play friendlies against
But if you're in the
guys that probably shouldn't be
but if you're
playing.
in the Champions League final, you're
Yep.
playing into June, and then
True.
you've got to
Into June,
report
yeah.
back July
True.
1 for
Yep.
preseason.
For preseason. Yep.
And then,
Yeah.
like you
So
said, if you're coming here, or if you're going to like Singapore and far East Asia and all that, that's all heavy travel, man. It's insane. I get the money aspect of it, but like, when is enough going to be enough?
for Manchester United, they can't afford anybody.
so,
But I digress.
so tell me. So I was looking at this San Diego team today. It's the newest, latest expansion team, and
Yep.
I have no idea how does expansion work in the MLS. Is it like the NHL and the NBA?
So it's interesting because there's no. It's similar in the sense that there's. I can walk you through the process. I'm relatively familiar because I was very curious. And an interesting fact, and I'll kind of tie it all in together. San Diego, the final step of that process, they wrote Major League Soccer a check for $500 million to join MLS. We're gonna circle back to how they got to that point, but just to give you an idea, the first expansion team in 2007 paid 18 million. So here's how it works. It similar to the NBA and the NHL, there is an application process, right? So any city within the United States or Canada, in the case of leagues such as the NHL, NBA, or MLS, you can submit a business plan. A business plan is 4 parts. It's your ownership group. Do you have a stadium or can you use one? How many fans do you expect to have? And what is the business market for an expansion franchise? You submit this to the MLS. A lot of cities submit this and get to the second stage. Second stage is pretty much completely out of, ironically, the MLS's hands. They actually bring in third party consultants for a wholly unbiased look at how that application pans out. Do you have enough money? Do you have the right owners? Do you have the fans? Can you fill the stadium? And what stadium? Is it viable? The other part of that second step is they actually meet with local government. Obviously, that's very important for developing stadium plans, and transportation is one of their biggest topics. Part 3, if you get through all of that and they say, listen, this looks good, they come back to the MLS, those third-party consultants say, this is legit, hear them out. Then you go meet with not only the board of MLS and every single owner in MLS, which is now 30 of them, it was 29 when San Diego applied, and you pitch that same business plan to them with the additional requirement of what's in it for us. And what's in it for them is that by being an owner in MLS, assuming you've been approved by the owners and the board, you write a check to Major League Soccer that helps with league funding. And the owners are part beneficiaries of league funding. So that $500 million pays the salaries of all of MLS's employees and helps in the development of existing franchises, which means it goes to the owners who can then spend it on their clubs. So it's a long process. It takes years to apply, and there have been several rejections. So San Diego getting approved, you would think it's a no-brainer. It's in Southern California. It's an established, sports hotbed in general. They've supported major teams before. It's got a hotbed and roots in terms of soccer development at the youth level and the college level. So they'll be able to put an academy in there. But frankly, it also mattered that Mohamed Mansour could write the check. I mean, $500 million is not a small investment to not go directly to your club. Because if you think about it, he just wrote that check. Not a penny of it goes to San Diego. So he then has to fund everything on the back of that. Now that's how they got the team.
How do they build the roster? Is it like, do the other 29 teams have to leave so many players exposed and then they get to pick them? Or is it just they got to go out?
So everybody's exposed to discussions, but you designate essentially the lower part of your roster to be available somewhat. But they are expected to make every effort to not draw from the other teams. Previously, the MLS tried to create similar to what we see in hockey. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but when the Las Vegas Golden Knights came into the league, they essentially had a player draft. The MLS experimented with that earlier in its existence, and the problem was there just weren't enough good players to go around. So part of the obligation as an existing team is you make your players available for offer, right? So essentially you take the guys that you're not using, they're on your practice squad. San Diego can sign some of those players to a certain extent. The majority of the roster is expected to come from the general draft, which is from colleges and from other leagues and players who enter it, and both local and international signings of free agents. So you can sign anyone from USL. You can sign directly from college. You can sign players from the bottom of other players' roster, and you're required, not explicitly, but you're required through the spending requirements on general allocation money and designated players to have a headline player. If you're going to acquire that headline player from another team, you have to pay a fair value transfer fee. San Diego was able to not sign one from another MLS club. They signed Irving Lozano, so who was at the time a free agent, so they didn't have to pay a fee to get him.
Do they get like any extra designated players when they first start out? Like, do they get any help to help jumpstart the club so they get off the ground running and can have some success?
Directly from MLS, they have access to the global scouting, which I would say is not really helpful, because how helpful can an unbiased league-wide scouting department really be when every single other team has its own scouting department? So you're not finding anyone who's new and doesn't already have offers from the club, but you do have access to that. The biggest problem has been that you don't really get a leg up. You've seen teams such as Nashville really struggle. And again, I think in large part because you're not cherry picking the premium players from other rosters, which I understand why that's the case. But since you're restricted to who you can sign in the first place, and you have to set aside $500 million to even join the league, which is essentially dead money to you, it becomes very expensive to build a winning roster in the beginning. San Diego's model and their goal for the future is to build around the farm team, the recruiting. So they're building 125,000 square foot training facility,
I saw that. It
and
looks lights out.
it looks lights out. And the idea is that they're going to be able to recruit internationally into the academy and build from the ground up. So yes, they will be spending. Mohamed Mansour has said, I am absolutely going to continue to bring in star players to this club, but I want to run an academy based program. And that's going to help us be sustainable long term. And so that's the goal. And they're going to invest, additional money. Could they go and sign a couple extra players? They have designated player slots, no more or less than any other club. Lozano being one of them, so they can pay him over the cap.
And he should do well. I mean, he's still young enough for the MLS, in my opinion, to come in and really put a stamp on his name.
He is, and look, he's played in top leagues, he's played in Europe, and he's played against a lot of these players before in USA versus Mexico matches. I say a lot of them. Of course, the USA roster is only 20 or 30 players. He's familiar with the competition, and he's risen through the ranks. He's strong, he's quick, he's technically gifted. You have all three of those, you're ahead of most MLS players, and I say that with love.
And he had a great World Cup in 2018.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did, and I think probably one of the biggest surprises was the trajectory. So his ascendancy at that point, he was quite on the rise, and he ended up going to PSV and doing very well over there. I think people expected to see him in the top three leagues, either somewhere in Spain, Germany, possibly Italy. I believe he played a season for Napoli. You'll have to correct me on that, but the fact that he has come to the MLS is a coup in the sense that he still has plenty of good years ahead of him.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to get into, because this is brand new to the league this year as well, is this cash player trade.
Yeah, cash player trade, which go ahead.
I was trying to read into. I can understand how it works, but I can't wrap my head around why that they would introduce this.
So the big difference, and the MLS used to pride itself on the fact that they do transfers differently, right? It's not like Europe where you just own the rights to the player and you just buy them outright from each other. The idea with trades was initially found in the fact that we had a smaller league and you couldn't just leave the other team with nobody, right? So they wanted to use the US model. You see it in the NBA, for example, where at least there's an exchange of either draft picks or players. And if money was exchanged hands, it was limited by what's called the GAM, the general allocation money, which is the overall expenditure that you're limited to. So designated players, you're familiar with the concept. You can pay for them whatever you want, and you can pay them in salary and sponsorship, whatever you'd like, and you're not restricted by the cap. The cap is essentially general allocation money. The idea was to create parity. The problem is now that the league is 30 teams, and now that we can recruit internationally, we don't need the bumpers on the lanes. They're going to let teams bowl essentially. So a transfer that you were very interested in, Evander, was very fun. One of the very first cash for player trades, and it's not novel to world soccer fan because we've seen these types of things all the time. They paid money for him. They paid $12 million for him, and they put together an incentive deal, and they put a percentage on him. So if Evander is ever sold on for any amount of money, Portland receives a portion for it. It's great business for Portland moving forward, ensuring that even if they screwed up and gave their investment up for too little, which I think they did, 12 million was peanuts. I think with all of the incentives, it comes out to 18, which is still not a lot.
He was second. He was second to Messi in points last year.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was, and he was scoring for fun in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like he had an Aaron Rodgers moment, after the season and said something about upper management and ownership that he shouldn't have said. But when I saw that, I was like, this is crazy because you just can't go out and find that guy again like that quick to replace him. But I, it was great business for Cincy,
Yeah.
especially after they added the guy from Belgium in that previously MLS record signing.
Right.
Uh, I don't know. Like, has Portland done enough to cover that loss? I was reading. I feel like they did, but
Yeah, yes and no in the sense that in the MLS there are very few non-big name star players. And I say that with all due respect to Evander. He is not the poster child of MLS, but he is young, he's extremely talented, and at the MLS level he has been very successful. Granted, he was only with Portland, I think, calendar-wise a year and a half for one full season. But guys who bang in goals are worth a lot more than 12 million. So regardless of the additional signings, I think replacing the aura and the success and the youth that they had invested in him on relatively low wages, they screwed up. I can't be nice about it. It's a
right.
horrible, horrible transfer. And I understand that he badmouthed you, but he's young. Take him in the back room and say, listen, buddy, you can't talk like that to the media, even if you hate all of us. Do it respectfully. Here's the right way to do it. If you want to sit down with the owner, fine, we'll get him in the room. And then you keep him. There's got to be a better way to handle it than selling him for peanuts across the league. Just
And
because you sold him to the East Coast, you think you didn't sell him to a rival? It's the MLS. Everybody's your
right, and it's not like if he didn't want to be there, at least tell them I'm not going to Cincinnati.
rival.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I've never been to Portland. I hear it's a great time. I've never ever heard of anybody telling me how great of a time Cincinnati is. You know?
Well, I think honestly, he saw the opportunity to win. And we'll talk about that when we talk about dark horses. I think Cincinnati's up there. They had a fifth place finish, they had a third place finish. They're going to be challenging with bringing in Denke, who bangs in goals for fun. You put Evander either up top with him or behind him or out on the wing. They're going to have a devastating attack, and they're well stocked from front to the back. They defend well. Since he's going to be a problem in the East, and I think Evander looked around at the various offers and said, I want to go to a contender, but I also want to be the star. And frankly, when I pull on that Cincinnati shirt, nobody's buying the Denke jersey. He's not going to Miami where, he's number 6. He's still going to be the star in Cincinnati. And I think that mattered to him. He's still young. And I think, what a coup by Cincy to bring him in. And I think they sold him on the idea that they might go places this year.
Great piece of business. So, let's transition from Cincy, who in November set the MLS record for the most outlay on a signing. And this one has blown my mind by Atlanta, and I'll tell you why. But this guy Latte, if I'm saying it correctly,
Yeah, latte latte, yeah.
from Middleborough in the championship, he's 12th in scoring rate
Yep.
in the championship,
Yep.
and they laid out 22 million for this dude.
Yeah.
6 million more than what Cincy laid out for the Belgium guy. I can't remember his name, but I saw that first. I saw where he was coming from, and I said
Middlesbrough.
22 million. And then I saw what his scoring rate is, and I'm like, who pulled the wool over these guys' eyes? So,
Well,
real
yeah,
quick
yeah.
before we dive into it, because this is where, like, really where I want to go with the discussion is, I think this sets a massive poor precedent going forward with what these clubs in MLS are going to start doing with transfer fees. Because if they're laying out 22 mil for a guy like this,
Yeah.
it's only going to go up from here. So, like, I'm going to say this guy, in my opinion, playing in the championship, 12th in the scoring rate, C plus, B minus player,
Yeah.
and would
Yeah.
drop 22.
I think so. My personal belief, based on what I've read, is so I context matters here for me, and I agree. Is it an overprice based on what he's doing and who he's doing it for? Absolutely. No disrespect to the championship. I think anybody who can score goals in the championship, he's got a 0.6 expected goals per game, so he's scoring, a goal every 2-3 games. Uh, Not terrible. I mean, the championship is decent football, right? I think what happened was they went to sign Miguel Almiron back, and he said, "I'd love to come back to Atlanta. You guys bred me into a superstar until I left, for 5 years ago, tear it up at Newcastle. I want a striker ahead of me. I want someone who's, played in Europe, preferably in England, who's going to score goals, who when I'm hitting through balls, he's not missing." And I think this is the best they could do. I think they came back to the table and said, "Yeah, we got a guy from England. He can score goals." They just didn't say what part of England or how many, right? But I really no, seriously. I mean, I know that sounds comical, but as an attacking midfielder who's played at a high level, he probably said, "Listen, my contribution to this team is the fact that I can set up goals. I did it at the highest level. If I'm going to play for you guys again, get me a striker." And so I think somewhat posturing from Atlanta, they said, "Here, we got one right here." The downside is to make that happen, not only did they spend 22 million, which will be impactful on their other spending, they lost Thiago Almada, who I think is the MLS's biggest loss because he was one of the most dominant and creative midfielders in the league last season. And Almiron, I guess, is going to fill those shoes, albeit slightly higher up the pitch. So in terms of overall spend, back to your point, they definitely overpaid.
Yeah,
I
and I'm
mean,
just worried about where it sets the bar for
where does it
MLS.
go? Where do they go from there?
Like, the spending's just going to get out of control, and I don't mind them spending, but let's be fair and honest. There's guys with bigger names in Europe that wouldn't move within Europe for that price tag. So I just don't. I like the slow and steady growth of the MLS, and I'm stoked, right, that we're going into year 30. So they're
Right.
obviously done something right. I just don't want it to get all fugazi now going out of the gate. You want
Yeah.
to tell me that 3 months ago, 16 million, Atlanta comes in at 17 million? I could live with it. 18 million, I could live with it. But a $6 million jump in 3 months just says to me the next one's going to be 30.
Next one's going to be 30, and I think the bigger concern is what are you getting for 30? Because
Right.
again, there's still, and granted, you can still designate several players on your roster, but you still have general allocation money, and you still have money concerns in general. I agree with you in the sense that if they paid 18 for Latela and then spent 4 million on another midfielder, possibly within MLS in a cash for player trade or someone in an equivalent league to replace Almada in the midfield, that might have looked better overall on paper, not only as an investment but also strengthening the side. So I think it's to be seen, but yeah, they can't chase the prices because inflation is not going to play nice with the MLS. Unfortunately, because there's only certain clubs that can keep up with it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's an intriguing point of view from you. I read that today that the guy was coming back from Newcastle. So
Yeah.
uh, great move for them. So we're going to see. Atlanta, they had a run in the playoffs. Let's see what happens. And speaking of who had the run in the playoffs, Inter Miami.
Inter
Did they
Miami. Oh boy.
did they do enough? Did they refresh the squad enough? Did they get younger enough to for this side of the pond for a run at the quad?
I think I'll start with no. Quad, no. No. Four different competitions. So as a little recap for the listeners, right? Four departures, five additional signings. So overall, I believe the average age of the players that came in versus those who left, they got younger on average of, I think it was like 2.5 years, 2.5 years. So they got some fresher legs in from the new transfers. Overall, you lose four, you add five. My biggest concern is that you're in four competitions. Netting one additional player to your roster is not going to win you three additional competitions when you couldn't even win one. Whether the fact that Miami just didn't have the right players or they were too tired, the run, in the cup at the end was abysmal by their standards.
Yeah.
By any other MLS club, if you take the couple big names out of it based on how well they did in the season, it's also still disappointing because they won the Supporters Shield. They were ready for the big run, for the double, and they just fell short, right? Overall, we've seen it in Europe. We're going to now see it, surprisingly in America. Four competitions, fielding your team across four competitions, regardless of how spread out they are, is fatiguing. And I hate to say this because I love the man with all my heart. Lionel Messi is old. And I say he's old not on age, but a very interesting statistic that I read today. I don't know if you've seen it, the walking stats.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
So for those who don't,
69 minutes,
those
right?
what's that?
69 minutes, right?
69 minutes, and to put it in perspective, no other player, including goalkeepers, walks more than 64. And the only players, excuse me, excluding goalkeepers, no other player walks more than 64 minutes across the league. So Messi spends 5 more minutes per match, either standing or walking around. And I think, I know you saw some highlights of the game last night. I watched the whole game last night. Granted, it's -3 degrees with the -8 wind chill. So I give him somewhat of a break, but my man didn't move at all. He was frozen to the spot. And I would love to say that's the temperature, but frankly, there wasn't a lot of movement around him because Suarez was doing it too. And if your attack's fulcrum is an attacking midfielder who doesn't have the legs to move out to the wing where he experienced a lot of his joy younger in his career, and a striker who are static and immobile, you're going to struggle. The idea was we're going to grow the squad and we're going to bring in youth. And Javier Mascherano, albeit he's unproven at the top level, was phenomenal as a youth coach. He's going to coach these youth to get Inter Miami to the next level. Well, you only got net one new player. So youth is now going to be directly out of the academy, which hasn't been established for more than 5 years. And the idea that that's enough to win you not only one, but two, but four competitions, I just don't see enough there.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? Like I just went through it with my team, right? They were in it for the quad. They were in it for the quad last year. Settled for one. I haven't talked to you in a while. I was super happy that Liverpool bounced out of the FA Cup
yeah.
because to
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
priority number one is your own league. Priority number two is the Champions League. Like, it's okay for Miami to get one or two. I think for Miami right now, the validation for them would be the MLS Cup. Forget
Yeah.
everything else right now. You've got some old timers. Manage this thing, play this thing out where that's your only priority. And if you fizzle out in these other cup competitions, going back to what you said when you first came on, imagine if Messi went out last night with a torn hammy. Everybody would be saying today, what the hell was he doing playing in that environment, that weather, at that age, with that many miles on his legs?
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of the pundits were complaining about the opposite. There was a rumor from probably somebody who needed clicks that Messi wasn't going to play because it was too cold. And, it sparked debates across all of the different channels. Goal.com. We had the Golasso show on CBS Sports. We had all of the ESPN chuckleheads that they have, all debating whether or not Messi was going to play, whether it was the right decision, whether he was giving up on his team, yada, yada, yada. To your point, who cares? Because if he gets hurt in that meaningless game, freezing his butt off in Kansas City, the league suffers. I'm not worried about the team, and I hate to say that. Listen, I live in Miami. I love this club. I love Messi for what he's done in the sport. But the league, MLS itself, suffers. We still have a couple days till the start of the season. Apple owns the exclusive rights to the MLS season pass. Over 80% of the games are exclusively on Apple TV Plus with an additional subscription of $99 to get MLS season pass. I don't think anybody's paying that if Messi tears his hamstring in Kansas City playing in the playing in the Champions Cup. Give me
And back to your point again, it's on Fox Sports too. How many people get that channel? I know I don't.
How many people get that channel, and even more so, how many people are going to be flipping through their cable, see that game? I watched the game. It was abysmal because they were freezing.
Reason.
They both gave a decent effort, but the first 40 minutes of the match were atrocious. It was so boring. Kansas finally got some momentum at the very end of the first half. They created a couple chances, had a big header miss, but my God, I mean, at one point, Luis Suarez looked to kick a through ball and towed it about 50 feet into the air. It went straight up, and not a single player ran to go get it.
Yeah.
It just the game was unfortunate, and I get it. Listen, in the United States, we're not very forgiving. We play in the cold all the time. Football, lacrosse, even baseball to a certain extent. Yes, it's a spring sport, but they play in October. We all play in the cold, right? I don't disagree that athletes should be out there. They're getting compensated extremely well to do so, the majority of them. Maybe not some of the lower name guys, but you have to do better. You, MLS, even though it's not your competition, quote unquote, protect your players. Mascherano, protect your players. He doesn't have to be out there. Doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to have Messi on opening night of the MLS season. 30th season, hallmark, landmark, number, your top star. His wage bill is tied to the Apple TV package.
Yep.
And nobody's got eyeballs on that game. So to me, I just thought it was stupid. And watch, now he'll probably come out Saturday night and get hurt because he won't be able to get loose, from being so cold last night. But anyways, so let's move on because you and I are both 100% same page. I threw this at you today. Biggest addition to the MLS from outside the MLS and biggest loss.
Biggest loss, I think we already touched on. I think Thiago Almada going overseas. I didn't watch a ton of Atlanta. I probably watched between 5 or 10 games outside of all of their playoff runs. He was fun to watch. And I think when you've got a player in the midfield who, again, isn't your superstar player, but when you flip on for most of the country outside of the Georgia and Northern Florida region, you flip on a random game and it's got Atlanta United, and you've got not only an aggressive but talented midfielder controlling the flow of the game for his team, setting up chances, transitioning the ball on attack. That's fun to watch. And that's what people tune in for, excitement. He was an exciting player. He's talented. We're going to miss him. On the flip side of that, we got some excitement coming in. A name that you probably heard of, Wilfred Zaha.
Yep.
He's an entertainer. He's always been an entertainer. When he played for United, when he went to Crystal Palace and really flourished as a superstar, I think he's going to do great in MLS. He's quick, he's pacey, he's creative, he can set up other players, and he can finish. We need goals. We need a little flair in the MLS. He's going to bring it.
If you're successful in the EPL, it's almost impossible for you to come to the MLS and fail.
Yeah.
I think he's going to bring a lot of creativity, a lot of energy, like you said, a lot of excitement and fun, and he's going to be a breath of fresh air. I want to see more guys like that come over here. You know who he reminds me of, and he would have been a perfect fit here too, was Daniel Sturridge.
Yes. Yes.
A guy that's when he's out there, he's got the smile on his face. He's always got an energy. When he scores a goal, he's got that flash and that pizzazz to
Yeah.
him. I, I think he's going to bring a lot.
Yeah. We've seen a trend of that. A little bit of flair and a little bit of arrogance goes a long way in the MLS. We saw it with Beckham. We saw it with Donovan. We saw it with Zlatan. Zlatan scored from half field in the first
Man,
3 minutes of his first appearance. I mean, but they're fun to watch. Whether you love them or hate them, they're fun to watch. A couple other guys that came in. Jonathan Bamba from Celta de Vigo signed for Chicago. I think he's going to make a difference. He's scored. He's played in La Liga, and listen, that's tough competition every day of the week as well. So he's going to make a difference. And then an old head joining New York City FC, Choupo-Moting.
oh, I saw that.
I believe most recently was at Bayern. Also made a name for himself at Paris Saint-Germain. He's been in the top leagues. And when Red Bull signed Emil Forsberg, he had a great influence. So I think translation from Bundesliga to MLS is there as well in terms of talent and impact. So he should be fun to watch as well.
Yeah, and speaking of like losses, like the Red Bulls, that center back, I can't remember his name, but that's a huge hit for them. And for them coming off of an MLS Cup final to have a caliber of that player in the position that he plays, it's going to be very difficult to replace.
Yeah, and you and I talked about this, a couple months ago. Is defense matters in the MLS. We talk a lot about the attacking talent. We want to see the goals, but man, I mean, look, get into Miami. Some of the goals they gave up were comical. Defending matters, and it will win you championships. I know that's the worst cliche in all of sports, but
Mm-hmm.
it's an accurate one.
Defense wins.
Defense wins championships. So
So I'm not
big,
going to.
big loss.
I'm not going to hold you to this. I'm not asking you for an end of season prediction. Favorites each conference. Give me your favorite top one for each conference.
I'll give you a top two because I'm non-committal in that way. I'll give you top two. Out west, it's both of the LA teams. They're coming back strong, and they're going to be hard to stop. I know the Western Conference traditionally, and pretty much all sports in the United States has been stronger. I think LAFC and the Galaxy are going to cause problems. They're going to be dominant throughout the regular season, chasing for that supporter shield. I believe one of the two of them will pick it up, no question. In the East, I do think Atlanta. I know I've much maligned the loss of Almada, but I think Almiron coming in, I'm hoping for the sake of the league. I'm being very optimistic that our boy Latte Lop scores some goals, Mr. $22 million man. And I also have Cincy. I think with Denke and with Evander, I think that's a tough attack to handle. They already had a solid defense, and they've put together several seasons in a row of solid performance in the MLS. And I think momentum over the seasons in a league like this matters. So Atlanta and Cincy in the East, the two LA teams out west.
You don't have Miami in the top two.
I knew you were going to pick up on that. I don't. I don't, and I hate it. And look, it's a contrarian pick, right? I think it would be very easy for me to pick Miami. I think, unfortunately for them, and this is my case for them not to do well. I would not be surprised if they do extremely well this year, but I worry about the management. Mascherano not proven at this level. I worry about the amount of games, and I think they didn't refresh the roster enough. I mean, yes, they signed 5 new players, and yes, that's going to help. The new right back looked particularly good last night in terms of both ball control and his distribution into the attack. Um, I think there's still question marks in defense, and I think it's a long season. We're in February, so I
And
think that matters.
between you and me, they weren't in my top 2 because I think age is just going to catch up with them. I'm going to say they're going for the quad. The age of their top players, fatigue and injury is going to play a major factor. And you've brought in some really good talent in the East, like you said with Atlanta. I want to see how fast those 2 guys gel together. But I think Cincinnati has the opportunity to be devastating with what they've done. So I'll go. Yeah, I think in the West, how can you argue against those 2 teams? They just constantly reload, retool the right way. I wouldn't say Atlanta yet, but where else do you go at this point? You would have to just say Miami just because of the names in the 11, right?
Yeah, or you go New York. We saw both of those teams peaking. In the Cup, they both had good Cup runs. I think they showed us. New York City FC with the upset, and then Red Bulls obviously pushing it all the way to the final. That they have the pieces together. Like you said, losing your star center back is not a great way to start the season. However, both of them have good foundations. They'll certainly be up there easily in the top 5. But I think that's really your only other options at this point. I don't think Chicago. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Finish your thought.
I don't think Chicago did enough. And in the West, I mean, you have your traditional players of Portland and Seattle who may make a push, but Minnesota might think we're being disrespectful, not even discussing them. But these teams are just too far away. I think compared to the solidity of the 2 LA teams.
To be fair, because next I wanted to get into dark horses. I have Minnesota as my dark horse in the West.
Well, we're not going to have a very fun show if we're picking the same dark horse here, Matt. Talk to me about Minnesota. I'm interested to hear yours.
They've been consistent, right? They've done well in the playoffs, and they're building the right way. They're being patient, and I think that they're doing a really nice job of keeping a good balance and not just saying, "Hey, we're gonna be all in. Let's do something stupid or rash." Took the first step here, the next step here. It's that gradual build to where maybe this season that patience pays off. And they've made some good signings. And they haven't lost a lot. So I like that consistency and patience that they've shown.
Yeah, I think I agree. My thoughts are similar. I think the signings are astute. I wanted to give them credit from a marketing perspective too. They signed. I'm going to forget the name. Let me check my notes. Please give me 1 second. To the South Korean Young Ho Young.
Oh, the midfielder, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the under 23s. Astute signings like that, I believe, set the club up for future success. I don't quite think they have enough, honestly. I think in terms of a quote unquote dark horse that actually has a legitimate shot, I would put my money in the Atlanta basket simply because of Almiron. But I was on the same page with you. I want to give a shout out to Minnesota, the way they're building. It's the right way. And from a marketing perspective, signing a South Korean brings in viewership and jersey sales, as we've seen with the absolute mad fanfare of Hyung Sun Min at Spurs.
Yeah, and I mean that's just in the West. I have a note here, and you might think I'm crazy, but they're being under the radar, kind of like Minnesota, making smart moves that tie into their system and their club. Is DC? I kind of like now. Do I think that they're gonna explode
Mm.
onto the scene and go crazy? But they're being very subtle. They're making some shrewd business moves.
Yep.
And do I think that they can knock on the door to the playoffs, get in, and win around? Yeah, that's what I picked for the East.
Yeah. I think the along those lines, I think I would give, if we're talking maybe make it and maybe win around, we're not talking about going all the way. Maybe be in that top five, conversation to at least make, the cup. I still call it the playoffs. I know it's the cup. The
Yeah, yeah,
cup.
yeah.
Sorry. The cup. I think in terms of overall build, I think from the Western side, I'd say Chicago. I think the Bamba signing again, we talked a little bit about it earlier, is going to be very impactful. I think he'll bring, some leadership to that team that they've been lacking in the East. Probably Philadelphia Union again, a solid team that doesn't have superstars, but it's been building slowly over time. I think they could make a run and just make a little bit of a push.
Yeah, and like when I say dark horse, I'm kind of look at saying they make the final four, and you kind of like at the beginning of the year were like, whoa, like I never thought that. And like I mean, final four for their conference. You know what I
For
mean?
their conference, yeah.
Yeah. Well, second to last, and we'll try to make this quick. Squad stepping back. Who do you got in the East?
I think, let's see.
If you and I both have the
You're
same,
gonna you're gonna hate this, but we touched on it already. Miami.
I got Columbus.
Columbus. Talk to me about Columbus.
I, bad playoff vibe the end of the
Hmm.
year, and their off-season business just wasn't.
What?
Uh,
Yeah.
they finished number two in the East. I don't think they're going to finish in the top four. And for a team, if you're finishing number two in a conference, if I'm going to have the confidence of saying you're not going to finish top four in your conference, to me, it's taking a step back.
Yeah. Yeah. Got one of those almost a war of attrition where they haven't outlasted the rest and they didn't do enough to strengthen. You would think, and again, I'm not sitting in the boardroom. I don't understand the club finances, but you would think after such a successful season last year that they would have doubled down on the existing roster and spent big. Capitalize on the success, capitalize on the intention. I don't always support signing a big name player just for the sake of it, but you had eyes on you. How do you keep it going? How do you ensure to the rest of the squad that this isn't just, you know, we're one of now the older teams in MLS. Our owners are raking in money because we've stuck around from when teams, used to cost 18 million and now they cost 500 million. How do you ensure to your players and your management that this is the real deal, that we care about this, that we want to make it to the next level? Bring in a name, bring in a star. We didn't see them do that this offseason. But again, I wish I could say I did. I do not know enough about the club's finances to know if that was even possible. I don't know where they are in their GAM, their general allocation money, if they have room for a designated player or not. But man, you would just think, imagine if you're on that roster, you get second place behind Miami, who's the record setting in the East, and your team's like, you guys did great. Try again next year. All right, coach, what do we got? How are we going to improve? Same thing, same people. it it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence. And listen, I understand professional athletes are built different. I'm obviously a little bit spoiled. I live in a fantasy world where I always want things to take a next step forward, but it would have been nice to see them kind of keep the foot on the gas per se. So
Yeah, and I
I
don't
see
know
them drop.
if this one in the West. I don't know if it's necessarily a step back, but in my opinion, from what I've researched and looked over, I think Dallas had the worst offseason of any club. Way too much going out versus what you got coming in.
Yeah, and we've seen. It's interesting because in years past, FC Dallas was a powerhouse, and they've somewhat lost their way, right? And we've seen pretty much across all of the professional leagues in the world, if you're losing too many players, you can't survive, right? And the Dallas Academy used to also be a great source of growth for the club, but things
Oh,
change.
unbelievable. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Again, the perhaps just not a priority from the ownership, and they believe in the academy. Um, but a signal, I think, to the players when more people are walking out the door than coming in. What does that say about the organization? I don't think it's a good look.
And if you could correct me if I'm wrong, just because I was researching 30 teams over the past couple of days,
Yeah.
but I feel like it was their two biggest offensive players that walked out the door.
Yes. And I'm gonna forget both of their names
You know,
now.
we
They
don't even
lost the
need to get into
striker.
the names, but it's just like it's not only having more guys going out than what's coming in.
Yeah.
It's the names on the back of some of these jerseys that are going out, and you're not even replacing them with like B talent, maybe not even C talent. So it's crazy to me. And last but not least, we've been on for an hour. It blew my mind. I thought the NFL had a coaching carousel problem. 11 out of 29 teams have new gaffers this season. It's
Yeah.
insane.
Well, I think it's almost it's almost a symptom of the league growth, I think, than anything else, because everybody's expecting a spark and a change, and it's almost the copycat mentality. I don't think the MLS is well served to continually rotate coaches. Now, granted, when you have 30 teams, everybody's on a different tenure, right? It's not that everybody decides at the same time they're going to switch coaches, but rarely does the coaching carousel end up providing the results you want, particularly when it comes to smaller clubs. Simply changing the coach is not enough. And I mean, I think we're going to see it this year with Miami, for example. The biggest change is the coach, when really you needed, much greater investment. Tata Martino is not a bad manager.
No.
He's a very successful manager across several different leagues and on the international scene. And he was fired, and fired with an eye to someone who's even better at managing the players. And at the end of the day, and I hate to make too many Premier League references. Look what United got with Amorim. You fire your manager halfway through the season. Granted, he stunk, but you have all of the same terrible players.
And they're players that don't fit this guy's system. Uh-oh. All right, everybody. Yeah, we lost Nick. I don't know what happened, but it's been a show. Next Tuesday, 6 o'clock. We'll be back.
Yes, sir.
With Matt.
Yes, sir.
All right, AJ, you want to take us home?
You guys, all the way this year.
We'll see. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for listening.